Hello friends, I'm Dr. Rajesh Chokhani, a general pediatrician from Bandra, Mumbai, and today we will be talking about therapy to control fever. So therapy to control fever can be specific where we treat the underlying cause, or it can be symptomatic which is directed towards treatment of just the fever itself. So this video we will focus on the second part, that is symptomatic treatment. Now, as Dr. Amdekar sir has already emphasized in his last video, therapy for anything goes much more beyond drug therapy. So, therapy to control fever actually starts with counseling because we need to allay the anxiety of the patient and the parents. So, we need to tell them that if we need to provide specific therapy, before that it is important that we diagnose the underlying condition, like say a bacterial infection or a malaria, and this process will take some time and will happen only when clinical clues come up. So in the interim, and also in situations where the underlying cause is self-resolving or does not have any specific therapy, like a common viral infection, so in both these situations we only provide symptomatic treatment. Further, we explain to them that fever is a protective response of the body to a foreign antigen or stimulus. So, within limits, it is a helpful phenomenon, though it does cause some discomfort at times. So, we now explain to them that this symptomatic treatment for fever should be offered only when there is discomfort caused by fever and not just because there is fever. The antipyretic only relieves the discomfort caused by the fever, it does not treat the underlying cause of fever. So while we wait for a treatable diagnosis to emerge, or we wait for self-resolution of the illness, we provide symptomatic treatment only when it causes discomfort to the patient. Now, while counseling, we also need to dispel some myths like that high fever can cause brain damage, it can't, and that febrile seizures can be prevented by aggressive antipyretic therapy. It can't. We know that febrile seizures are because of a genetic predisposition and they can occur even at lower temperatures during the rising phase of fever, much before we even get a chance to administer an antipyretic. Patient counseling also involves all that we are going to speak in the next few minutes, and in addition, we need to tell them when to report back while they are waiting with symptomatic therapy and what are the danger signs. Now, in adults, discomfort can be perceived by the adult, so it's very easy to decide when to administer an antipyretic. In children, discomfort manifests in the form of a change of behavior. So the previously normal, active, playful child now becomes dull or lethargic or irritable. And this is the point when we should administer an antipyretic, not at any particular degree of temperature. In fact, there are many children who are playing at 102 degrees Fahrenheit and we need not administer an antipyretic to them. On another note, antipyretic should be administered at the peak of fever, then it works the best. If an antipyretic is administered before the peak during the rising phase of fever, the fever is still anyway going to rise because the hypothalamic set point has already been upregulated and the body will follow that physiology, and it is only later that the antipyretic effect will kick in. So the parents feel that the fever rose even after giving the antipyretic when an antipyretic is administered at a low temperature or during the rising phase of fever. Once we administer an antipyretic, in about an hour or so, the response that we expect mainly is relief of discomfort. The fever may come down variably. So, this relief of discomfort is to be taken as a good response to antipyretic, irrespective of by what degree the fever has reduced. Obviously, we do not administer the antipyretic round the clock, nor do we administer it just because the next dose is due if there is no fever at that time, and there is no point in giving an antipyretic with the hope of preventing the fever. So giving it before the fever, hoping that the fever won't rise. All this does not work. Now, in children and even in adults for that matter, we should stick to paracetamol as the antipyretic. In children, we should use 15 mg per kg per dose, 6 hourly if required. And in adults, even in overweight adults, the dose of 500 to 650 mg of paracetamol per dose is good enough to relieve the discomfort. Now, though ibuprofen is approved as an antipyretic, we should be using it sparingly because there is no added advantage of it over paracetamol once we have understood the concept of treating fever symptomatically. Further, it runs a small risk of increased gastric irritation and an occasional interstitial nephritis as well. Other NSAIDs like diclofenac or nimesulide or mefenamic acid should not be used at all. Other routes of administration like rectal suppositories or injectable antipyretic are very rarely needed only if the patient is just unable to take the antipyretic orally or is unable to retain it. Now, besides the antipyretic, other measures that are important while managing fever are maintenance of adequate hydration and the clothing. It is important that the patient is not kept in a stuffy atmosphere, hot atmosphere with no fan or AC, because the physiology of an antipyretic is that it will bring down the thermostat, bring down the hypothalamic set point, and then the body will want to release heat through the skin to the exterior, and therefore we should provide conditions which are amenable to this, and therefore the patient should be in a comfortable clothing and in a comfortable environment and well hydrated. On similar lines, sometimes newborns come with low grade fever because they have been kept in an overheated atmosphere. The treatment is merely reducing the excess clothing and keeping them in a comfortable environment, and this fever responds. Hyperthermia is a different situation altogether where antipyretics just don't work. This is because the hypothalamic set point has not been upregulated here. Here, the problem is actually a failure of homeostasis where usually the body is unable to dissipate heat to the exterior because the exterior is extremely hot, as is seen in the case of environmental fever or heat fever, and occasionally the body is producing heat much more than its ability to dissipate, as is seen in an overdose of, let's say, an anticholinergic. So in these situations, antipyretics don't work, and we need to use external cooling measures and ensure adequate hydration, either oral or intravenous. Coming to tepid sponging. According to evidence-based medicine, tepid sponging is not recommended because they found that it does not provide any added benefit over and above the antipyretic, and yet it might add to some discomfort during the process of sponging. However, we have a different perspective on this. We feel that if correctly done, tepid sponging does modestly reduce the temperature temporarily, and this helps to allay parental anxiety, and mainly it helps to avoid preponing the dose of an antipyretic much before it was actually due, and therefore indirectly it helps us to avoid overdose of the antipyretic. The correct way of doing tepid sponging is to use a towel which is wetted in tepid or lukewarm water, squeezed completely, and then used to wipe different parts of the exposed body sequentially, allowing that part to dry itself on its own by evaporation. When this is done, it does reduce the temperature somewhat and it does make the patient a little more comfortable. And as we said, it delays the next dose of the antipyretic. Of course, this should not be done in very young infants and it should not be done in patients who are feeling cold or who are shivering. Now, this concept of treating fever only when it causes discomfort applies to normal hosts. If in certain situations, special situations, the increased metabolic demand caused by fever is itself detrimental to the body, like for example a major head injury or a status epilepticus or burns patients, then of course we will treat the fever actively. So friends, to summarize, therapy to control fever starts with counseling along with a judicious use of oral paracetamol just to treat discomfort caused by fever while we await specific therapy, if any, coupled with proper clothing and adequate hydration. Thank you. The next video will be by Amdekar sir on therapy to control pain.